So with the upcoming Palworld spin-off game, Pal Farm on the horizon, we need to talk about the conspiracy that I believe that until Pokopia was announced, this game did not exist. Yes, I believe, and I'm not alone in this, in that Pocket Pair produced a trailer for a game that did not enter production until right now. Okay, so I think their official claim that the game was in development for a year before formally announced doesn't make any sense considering like Palworld still being worked on and everything else they do. Like Palworld Farming Sim, whatever it's called. This thing, the timing of the announcement is just super shady because we just got Pokopia. We just got confirmation that Nintendo contracted the Dragon Quest Builders guys to work on Pokopia, which by the way, you keep seeing people like insist that Nintendo ripped off Dragon Quest. Well, I certainly don't see the Dragon Quest team saying that. I certainly don't see like they're working together on a game. So please, like, stop stop pretending as if Nintendo can't as if Nintendo plagiarized Dragon Quest. It isn't true. Neither party thinks that. Nobody thinks that outside of Palworld fanboys. Anyway, so like they contracted the Dragon Quest Builders team at Koei Tecmo, and they are producing a new Pokemon themed Builders game. Pokopia. Looks great, looks exciting. Anyone who's played Dragon Quest Builders knows it's going to be peak. Dragon Quest Builders is awesome. I'm super excited for it. Everyone was thrilled about Pokopia, except Palworld fans. So what we saw immediately after Pokopia came out was that people were complaining that it looked too much like Dragon Quest Builders, even though they contracted the developer. It was like it looked the same as other farming games, and that Nintendo would go after them next. Lots of coping and seething. And now, Palworld announced their farming sim. Suddenly, that's like this huge hype announcement that really needs to be like praised and worshipped. Like and I really do have to question the timing of this and like the behavior of the fans because like there's nothing special or interesting about Palworld farming. Like it's not going to stick out from the competition. It's not unique, fun, fresh, exciting. It is just clearly just a blatant cash grab trying to garner attention from Nintendo's Pokopia project, right? So when you keep that in mind, when you keep the timing, when you keep in mind the Palworld fan culture, when you keep in mind their behavior, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that the trailer was produced in a couple of weeks using a bunch of like Palworld assets, and there's not actually a game to go along with it yet. I think Nintendo announced Pokopia, and Pocket Pair immediately produced this trailer that isn't based on any actual gameplay footage and are just going to try and make a game around it. Because if you look at like Legends, if you look at like Pal World, like a lot of what it plagiarized came from Legends Arceus specifically. Like even though that came out after like the Game Awards trailer in 2021. So like Pal World seems to be able to plagiarize mechanics and assets like uh during development. So to me, I think what this means is that they produced a trailer to hype up a game that doesn't exist yet, and they're now in the process of making it a thing and pumping it out sometime next year. You know, because they knew that because Nintendo did something similar with their farming game, that they'd be able to get some kind of hyper attention for their project. Like, I think that's what's happened. And like considering like how fucking Bucky, that fucking retard on Twitter who works there, like considering how much he seethed about people like pointing this out, like how the timing of this was really odd and how it doesn't make any sense. Like um I think it is true. Like I think Power World produced this trailer purely to grift off of Pokemon hate. Like that's kind of my mentality because that's the only That's the only time anybody talks about them at all, is in regards to like the Pokemon controversy. Like when they did that stupid like fishing game, nobody gave a shit. Like nobody's like nobody's playing Craftopia, you know? Like nobody nobody knows nobody knows what they're nobody cares about or anything they do outside of like Pokemon related plagiarism. So yeah, like I think that Palworld's thing going forward is trying to fly as close to the sun as possible, trying to plagiarize Nintendo, trying to like continue plagiarizing their content, trying to like antagonize fans, keeping themselves relevant, hoping for another hit and hoping that they aren't going to get cracked down on hard by the Japanese court system. And I think it's very clear at this point, like I have been blocked on Twitter by them for pointing this out, that they are losing the lawsuit. Like all of their attempts at like trying to circumvent it just aren't going to result in anything. They haven't won. They haven't like been able to produce new content. Their contract with Sony isn't going to go anywhere. Like Palworld just like really had this very specific business strategy of committing straight up crimes to try and undermine Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. And we're supposed to just believe that stealing mechanics, assets, and features from other games is just acceptable. Like, you know, Grums keeps going to the bat for the idea, confirming that Blizzard are indeed thieves and never produce anything original on their own. StarCraft is just a Warhammer 40K knockoff product. You know, Grums came out and said that, like, well, like, we at Blizzard stole things all the time. Like, first of all, like, LOL at admitting that on Twitter. But second of all, like, I don't care what Blizzard does. You know, if anything, I think Blizzard should have been sued for what they did in general because I think there's a rumor that like StarCraft was supposed to be like a 40K project and then they like retooled it, like but like my point is like it's not about like stealing like generic ideas or concepts or gameplay mechanics. Like they are ripping wholesale entire like animations, models, and mechanics code from the actual game. It's not that like committing an action performs the same action like in real like it is gameplay specific how it works in the game world, and the patents are meant to demonstrate that. They're meant to emphasize like what mechanics Pocket Pair has stolen and how that's applied in the game world and why exactly it is derivative. Like Palworld is not going to win this lawsuit. And like I really have to wonder like um at what point the online gaming community is going to have to kneel and acknowledge that Harmon Smith was right about this all along. Like this reminds me of like Nick Rekieta, you know, when like I was the only person who was like who came out and said that Rekieta was a fraudster, he doesn't practice law, he doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. Like but no, he has a law degree, bro. Like, you know, people would make excuses for this streamer, this alcoholic streamer, like and his like qualifications in law. Like again, I do think this really needs to be said a lot is that a lot of the defense force for Palworld comes about because people desperately want it to be true. You know, people really wanted to believe that Pocket Pair was going to beat Nintendo, that it was going to be bigger than Pokemon, that Palworld was going to be this huge successful thing, and it just never happened. Like you can talk all you want about Palworld, but like when you look at like the past 5 years of meme games, when you look at like FNAF or like Among Us or Fall Guys, like who do you know who even remembers those games today? Like, you know, stuff like Undertale, like, you know, Celeste, you know, like these were supposedly like these huge like genre defining classics at the time. And yet like these days nobody knows or cares about them at all, you know? Like that's kind of where Palworld is at. You know, it was a meme game. It was something that was only relevant because of its reputation as the anti-Pokemon and not based on like anything of merit it actually accomplished. You know, it didn't evolve the Pokemon gameplay formula. It doesn't have some riveting new gameplay loop. It's just sloppish. It's repetitive, dry, and boring. And anybody who like seriously tried playing the game will tell you that. Like the game is shallow. Like, and it's kind of shocking in this regard because you see so many people insist that like Power World is so much better than Pokemon, especially when it comes to the visuals. And what game are you playing? Because Power World just has this weird visual clash with the environment and the models and what's going on. Like it feels like to me people think Power World looks better because it is a third person shooter. Like it's because of the survival aspects. It's because like well Pokemon is an RPG and it has static animations. Like yeah, because that's what RPGs do. Those same mechanics that made Palworld so popular on a superficial level, however, are the same things that mean that it will never compete with Pokemon long term. Because Pokemon's core appeal is the collecting aspect. It's leveling up your monsters. It's like learning their utility and how you can use them, not only in battle, but in all the other methods that they can use throughout the games. Like there's so much to do in Pokemon. It really is endlessly replayable. But in something like Palworld, all you're doing is crafting things so you can craft more things. There is no real gameplay loop. There is no evolution. There is no like feeling of constantly doing something fresh, original, exciting, different. Like in Pow World, you're just doing the same thing over and over again, really for no reason, really just to spite Pokemon fans. And I do think that really needs to be emphasized whenever you talk about the game, is just how it only has momentum out of pure spite for Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. Like that's the only reason anybody talks about this game. It's the only reason anyone defends it, and it's getting to the point where when games plagiarize other games, like that Ananta thing, like certain people are coming out and damage controlling for it because acknowledging that plagiarism is wrong would mean acknowledging that Power World was wrong, and that's something that the community just can't bring itself to do. It's something that the community desperately wants to avoid under any circumstances because giving a Nintendo a W now would completely collapse everything that they've been working towards for the past like 8 years. They've been trying to destroy the Pokemon brand since Pokemon Go became the biggest thing in the world because the entertainment industry is threatened by this company. Pokemon is just bigger than everything they produce right now, and having to undermine it, they have to undermine it to keep their slop relevant. Like Pokemon's bigger than the MCU ever was. So when you take that into consideration, when you realize that like Nintendo and is this successful with this company, a company that's been like actively hated for like 30 years, even as a kid, people were telling me that Pokemon would soon fall off and become irrelevant. Like when you take that into consideration, like it really needs to be understood that Nintendo is going up against people who have no intention of ever allowing them any kind of leeway. Grums is never ever going to acknowledge Nintendo as being better than everyone else in the industry. Like people are never going to acknowledge Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as being a more successful game than Power World. They'll bring up the sales numbers, but not acknowledge that Scarlet and Violet was sold at twice the price and had DLC and merchandise, tie-in, the trading card games, and above all else, does get sequels. That's something that a lot of people are really struggling with right now, is that they can't process that Scarlet and Violet, even if it was as bad as it's said to be, it's not. It's actually one of my favorite generations. Like even if Scarlet and Violet really was bad, it wasn't the only Pokemon game to come out, in that span of time. Like Legends Arceus came out like earlier that year. So like this idea that that Scarlet and Violet was underwhelming or disappointing, like it just wouldn't really amount to much. It would not stop Pokemon from being successful. Pokemon X and Y were my least favorite generations was my least favorite generation ever when it came out, and it didn't impact the Pokemon brand at all. If anything, that was the game that kind of solidified the 3DS as the winner of that console generation. You know, far more successful and popular than the PlayStation 4. Like, it does need to be understood that there was never really a shot of Palworld eclipsing Pokemon in relevancy. Like, this is not a game that's endlessly replayable. It's not merchandisable. Like, they can't flesh it out into an animated series or like expand the brand past like the initial core concept. Like, it's just endlessly derivative of other properties of Pokemon, of Zelda, of Arc, you know. Like, the list goes on, and like you can't really build your company off of other people's work. You know, like, you can't just steal assets, mechanics, features, and expect people to accept or tolerate that. Like, Pocket Pair is already a failed studio, and that's not even taking into account the fact that the lawsuit has not finalized yet. So, like, when Pocket Pair gets ruined in court, when they're not allowed to use the Power World name anymore, like, the entire thing is going to collapse like a house of cards. And people keep pretending that Nintendo is the bad guy for this, but in reality, they're doing everything that they need to do to protect their brand. They have your best interest at heart.